Nothing Personal starts in 30 seconds. It's just business. This is Nothing Personal. Working. That's the Nothing Personal word of the day. It is Friday, March 7th, 2025. Working. We all do it. Friday comes. We're all excited. We think it's the end of the week. In baseball, you got to work 7 days a week. There's no off days in baseball. There's no crying in baseball. Even on a day when there's no game. You're reporting to spring training. You report in, do a little workout, then you can go home. During the off season, we do give the guys off days once in a while. But on the off days, they're with their family or hanging out, maybe doing their other work. Let's face it. If you're going to get paid, you got to work. There's no free lunch. Look what we do every day. Look what you do every day. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is working, and I feel fortunate. Not fortunate to know him, which I do. Look at me, David. Yes, as a little boy, and then he grew into a man who can mash a baseball. But I wonder why Vladimir Guerrero Jr. decided to give an interview with ESPN Deportes, and he decided to tell us exactly what happened with the negotiations with the Toronto Blue Jays. I was trying to think about what the strategy would be, why his agent would say, here's a good idea. Going into your final season before you become a free agent, let's explain to the world that you did not ask for what Juan Soto got, 15 years, $765 million from Steve Cohen. It's like a quarterback saying, hey, man, I didn't ask for what Watson got. It's a total outlier. I would have preferred for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to do an interview and say, I think it's obvious that Rafael Devers got 10 years, $313 million when he was 27 years old. I'm going to be 27 years old. I believe that I'm at least comparable to him, if not a little better. I wanted 10 years, $314 million. That would have been a very compelling thing because the Blue Jays would have been despondent had they been called out for not even offering Devers. You can't have your client, Vladimir Guerrero, talk about Fernando Tatis. Tatis got 14 years when he was 21 years old, and he got $340 million. It's nowhere near where Soto is. It's not even in the same ballpark. And it's not like Guerrero said, oh, I would have taken 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. No. He said I wanted 14 years or 15, even 20 if they'd give them to me. He told us that there was an exchange of figures, that the meetings went until that last day of the fake deadline before his reporting day, which, of course, is not a deadline at all, but it's a manufactured one. And he said we just couldn't reach an agreement. But don't worry, I'm not going to change the way I work. I have to keep working. Yes, that's true. He has to keep working. Because it's also true that none of the 30 teams will look at Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and say, oh, when I look at him, I think Tatis. Well, I mean, there's no steroid implications, so, okay, skip that. When I look at him, I don't think of Corey Seager. Corey Seager, 10 years, $325 million at the age of 27. Are we going to be upset with the Blue Jays for not giving 14 years to Vladimir Guerrero to go from age 27 to age 41 when he's already on the way to being a designated hitter? I'm just curious. Signing a player who you know is going to be a DH in the final many years of a contract is fine. Signing 2, less than ideal. Signing 3, impossible. So you're going to put all your eggs in the Guerrero basket because you're getting pressure from the fans or the media, or you're tired of being the bridesmaid because you're trying to get Judge and Ohtani and you think you do and then you don't? There's got to be a strategy when you give an interview to ESPN. The strategy for a player to give an interview is when the player is being castigated for a position that he takes or an action that he took. Think of it like sitting down with Barbara Walters, trying to explain without crying why, or Hugh Grant with Jay Leno. Was it Jay Leno or David Letterman? I think it was Jay Leno. Why? Vladimir Guerrero did nothing wrong. The Blue Jays did nothing wrong. Every single day, you have a player and a team that can't come to an agreement on value. They can't come to an agreement on term. They can't come to an agreement on how each party looks at the other. It's as normal as a Tuesday. It happens in every business. Every time an employee gets with his boss or her boss or their boss and says, oh, I thought I'd get a bigger raise or a bigger bonus or a bigger percentage of the company or a bigger commission structure. Sports is no different, nor should it be treated differently. When you are an employee of a company, forget the ability to go public. But here's a suggestion for you. Don't go into the food room or next to the water cooler and make a big stink about the fact that you're not paid enough or you're paid too much or other people aren't paid enough or you should have better opportunities, better benefits, because your bosses aren't going to really appreciate that. And if your bosses don't appreciate what you're doing, they are way less apt to bend. They're never going to break, but they're way less inclined to get even closer to what you want. And if you're going to meet the media before the season starts, are you going to say, I love the Blue Jays. I love the organization. I love the people. I love the fans. I love the city. I can't wait for the possibility of things working out. But I'm sorry that I liked a post of myself in a Yankees uniform. That's a little nugget there. You all remember that, I hope. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. said, I'm never going to play for the Yankees. And then he said, I didn't really mean that. I was young and stupid. And then somebody posted a doctored picture of him in a Yankee uniform. And there it is, like, his agents must be out of their minds. It's the last thing you need to do. You don't need to let the Yankees know that you want to be a Yankee. I didn't need to have players know they wanted to be a Marlin. Didn't care. I know how to make you want to be a Marlin, offer you more money and more years than anybody else. That's how. You think Jose Reyes woke up one day and said, man, I want to be a Marlin? No, he woke up one day and said, man, I want to be respected more than the Mets did. Give me more than they're offering. We are nowhere near close to Vladimir Guerrero signing long-term with the Blue Jays. The interview that he gave only guarantees that fact because the Blue Jays offering to give a 27-year-old 14 years is about as likely as me getting a 14-year deal with Meadowlark. Injuries. Oh, did you feel for Brian Cashman yesterday? Can we get a picture of Brian Cashman on Nothing Personal with David Samson YouTube channel when he was giving the interview that he gave with the injury updates for the Yankees? I'm going to do, in case we can't with our tiny, teeny operation, I'm going to give you my imitation of Brian Cashman giving you injury updates for LaMeheiu, Heel, and Stanton. Shoulders in. So I'm crinkling my jacket right now, which you're never supposed to do on camera. Down, head down, eyes up, forehead crinkled, like your jacket. And then you just start talking. And you start talking like this. You really don't go up. You go down. You try to stay a little monotone. You give updates about the injuries. But deep inside, you know what's happening? It is a roller coaster of 13-year-olds at a graduation party from middle school losing their minds because they're on rides. They're going nuts. Look at him. That's it. Coca, you're the best. Right now, you're seeing the picture of Brian Cashman. I love you, Brian, but my God, do I feel badly for you. Look at him. All right, so let me give you the update. Quick update. LaMeheiu, not coming back anytime soon. He has a grade 1 or 2 left calf strain. See you later. We have a wait to see. Cashman confirmed he's out at least 3 months. We may see him at some point in the summer. We had baseball parlance for that. You never hear, hey, we're looking forward to seeing him in the fall. There's only 2 seasons that are described when it comes to playing. There's only one that matters, fall, but there's 2 that are talked about. Hey, he should be good to go for spring, or hey, we're looking forward to seeing him during the summer. So spring is February, March. Summer is June, July, August. April, May, the way you say that is you never talk about that as a season. You just say, yeah, we expect him just to miss the early part of the season. That's how you describe it when someone has a chance to come back in April and May. The way he talked about Giancarlo Stanton was that, quote, we'll clearly look forward to getting him back at some point, but obviously in the near term, that won't be the case. Another frame of reference for temporal management, the near term. Do you ever do that in your work? You've got near-term goals. You've got short-term, mid-term, long-term. I do that. I do short, mid, long. A short-term situation is something I got to do that day. Mid-term is sometime in the next 2 working weeks. Long-term is anything after a month. And the second 2 weeks between midterm and long-term are just sort of there in the ether, waiting to either be midterm or short-term. Won't be back in the near term. He had PRP in his elbow twice. Let me give you a little talk about what PRP is. You've heard me talk about what it actually is, where you're transferring blood out, blood in. It's your blood. Make it better. I can count on 2 hands the number of times PRPs really made the difference. There are examples in my career for sure. There are examples with pitchers who they can avoid surgery, do a little PRP, do a little cortisone, do a little Z-Pack. It's not called the Z-Pack. That's the thing when you have phlegm and a sore throat and the clap. It's something that they can no longer give. Oh, come on, Coca. It must be Friday. There was a medicine that we gave to everyone. It was called a pack, and it was like a steroid pack, but not those kind of steroids. I want to say like Cepacol, but that's a mouthwash, or Cipriol, but that sounds like something I made up. It's something with a C that we would give to players all the time. Oh, slight inflammation, give them the C-Pack. Hope the inflammation goes away. And then finally it was disallowed. It was disavowed like Ethan Hunt, man. That'll kill people. All right, no more C-Packs. Not like the thing that helps you breathe when you're sleeping. I want Stanton to get better. I don't want him to have surgery on his elbows, because when you have surgery on your elbows, just a little note for elbow surgery people, not like Tommy John UCL. This is a different type of surgery, but you're out for an extended period of time. Not a great update for the Yankees. Now, what about our partners at DraftKings? Given all of those injury updates, Coca, can you confirm or deny or claim ignorance, which you've never done, the impact that had on the odds of the Yankees to win the AL East, to win the American League pennant, and to win the World Series, and what their over-under is in season wins? Any idea what the impact of this injury update was to those betting markets? I'll give you a hint. It was a number greater than -1 and fewer than 1. 0. No impact. Everything's going to be okay. Dave Roberts is negotiating an extension right now to become the highest paid off-field employee, meaning the highest paid manager, in all of baseball. 2 World Series in 5 years. The man's on the hot seat every single year. The pressure to win the World Series has been nothing compared to what it is now to repeat after they continue to add and add and add. Forget running it back after you win a World Series. They got better after winning the World Series. They're looking at a contract extension for him. And what was hidden in all of the news about the potential contract extension for Mr. Roberts' neighborhood, where he could certainly upgrade, they gave an update on Shohei Ohtani. Do you remember the 1,000 people that were watching Ohtani throw his bullpen during spring training? Do you remember all the horse hockey of the GMs who say, oh, he looks so good in the bullpen? Hey, you know what? We're going to throw to live hitters because that makes all the difference in the world. It's such a joke. Stop believing all of the stuff that's told to you by these people. It's just wrong. So Ohtani's throwing the bullpen, and everyone's all excited, but Roberts said he's not going to pitch in Japan, but he's going to hit. But don't worry, we've got Yamamoto and Sasaki to pitch in Japan. It's all going to be great. Look at Sasaki's splitter, man. It's so good. He's so good. Meanwhile, while all of the excitement of spring training is happening, guess what? Ohtani has not thrown a bullpen since February 25th. Remember the excitement of him finally graduating from throwing from 60 feet, 90 feet, 180 feet. Then you get on the mound, and then you start doing more than just a fastball. You start throwing a few off-speed pitches. See how that feels. The thing about doing a bullpen is you do a bullpen, then you see how you feel, then you do a bullpen again the day after. So it's pretty much every other day we have guys throwing bullpens. And do you know what happens when you can't do a bullpen? It's because you're not feeling right, because something happened. So finally, someone said, I can't imagine it took this long because it's March 6th when this happened. Hey, why isn't Ohtani throwing a bullpen since February 25th? Oh, no problem. We're giving him a little respite. That's the new code phrase of course, for a setback. You don't need to give a player a break from throwing bullpens unless they're hurt. Now, of course, what they're telling us is they want to give him a break because he's ramping up as a hitter. Normally, I'd have a ton of sympathy and understanding for such gobbledygook. But is it or is it not true that Shohei Ohtani is a two-way player? A top-of-the-rotation starter for which he's paid, and a top-of-the-rotation, middle-of-the-rotation bat MVP for which he is. Is it not true that I have gotten castigated, if not fully castrated? Well, that had nothing to do with my Ohtani take. However, it's really hard to be a two-way player, which is why we've never seen anything like Ohtani since Babe Ruth, because to be so good at both is impossible. To be a full-time MVP type hitter is a full-time job. To be a full-time Cy Young award-winning pitcher or Cy Young contending pitcher is a full-time job. Shohei Ohtani is not just recovering from a Tommy John, he also tore his labrum. We're talking about understanding that no matter what your name is, no matter how cute your dog is, for you to be ready to play a full regular season, albeit at DH, though it doesn't matter, that's a full regular season, you got to get ready and you got to be healthy. Focusing on pitching when you're not feeling perfect is a mistake because it can screw up your legs if your arm is hurting. It can screw up your legs if your shoulder's hurting. It can screw up your hitting if anything's hurting. They acknowledged he's not going to face hitters before going to Japan, but they were unwilling to talk about his timeline. Why do you think that is? Because when we have bad news to share, we don't share it. We tell you, hey, we're not sure, we haven't heard, we have no idea of the timeline. When you do know the timeline, you try to downplay it. He's out for the near term. He's likely not going to be around till summer, till after summer. When there's good news, we say it exactly. We are looking forward. The plan is Ohtani will be available to pitch in the rotation in May. We are excited because we're putting LaMeheiu on the injured list, but we expect it to be a minimum amount, 15, 10, 5, whatever the number of days. It's all about the language. Oh, I love this part. All right, Coca, will you play me some music, please?
You know what I want? I want to talk to Samson.
So you want to talk to Samson? Get into my Twitter. David P. Samson. Ask me a question. My DMs are open. I have way more bold DMs than I ever have, and I'm sorry about that. I really am, but I've been busy doing stuff. I've been busy working. You can also reach me at davidsamsonpodcast.com. I look at those emails more often than Twitter and Instagram because those emails could be, hey, I want to buy a shirt or a sweatshirt. Hi, David. Did you ever put a pitcher on an innings limit because you knew you would trade him later in the season? Oh, you knew. You knew the way to get on the show. You said hello and you asked a question about the Miami Marlins, and you asked a question that you knew would be of interest for me to talk about as a full segment on Nothing Personal. Sandy Alcantara is a ace for the Marlins, one of the best pitchers in baseball, coming off injuries. He's had Tommy John and various other things. Remember, he's the one who Peter Bendex, the esteemed president of baseball ops for the Marlins, said, oh man, he's throwing 98 right out of the chute in the bullpens to start spring training. Quick side note on that. I'll bet you $1 to your donut that Sandy was not actually throwing 98 in a bullpen, because if Sandy were throwing 98 in the bullpen, I would have gone to the bullpen. I would have taken all the balls away, and I would have said to the pitching coach, you're fired. And I would have said to the assistant pitching coach, see you later. I would have said to the bullpen catcher, take off your equipment and get out of here. Trying to come back from injury, throwing 98 at a bullpen. Here's the players who do that. The ones who have no chance of making the team and have the feeling that they can impress us with velocity in the first few days of spring training, and all we do is release them because they're not impressing us with volume, with volume. That's not the word. They're not impressing us with velocity. It's the opposite. But let's just assume that Sandy is totally healthy and everything's going great. Jeff Passan, the baseball insider for ESPN, wrote that Sandy will be on an innings limit, quote, particularly early in the season, leaving the potential for him to pitch into October if necessary. Of course, October, if necessary, is only if that he's traded to a contender, because the Marlins have a Lutarski's chance of the postseason this year. But he is an incredible asset. The Marlins would be practicing franchise malpractice if they don't trade Sandy to a contender. ESPN did a whole thing where Harold Reynolds said, I think he's going to be traded now. John Morosi said, I think he's going to be traded at the deadline. The general rule is that pitchers of that quality, you get a far bigger return when you trade a pitcher at the deadline than when you trade him at the beginning of spring training. The reason is that the likelihood of a pitcher having a Sabathia-like Brewers run is greater when you get him at the deadline than having him to suffer through an entire season where injuries are an issue. Though Sandy did pitch over 200 innings twice as recently as a couple years ago before he got hurt. But what do you do when you're a team that's plus 2,000 to make the playoffs, when you know you're not going to make it, when you know you're trading a player? Does it make sense to protect that player early and to put him on an innings limit? The question that you specifically asked was, have I ever done that? And the answer is no. And the answer is no, because even in 2013, when we ended up losing 100 games, we have gone into every season. And this may be my delusion. It may be my incompetence. But I went into every season thinking all I needed for the following two things to go right. That's when we had a good team. When you have a bad team, you say, all I need is for the following 12 things to go right. And if they go right, if everything hits the exact way, that we imagined during the offseason. This team can compete for a playoff spot through the deadline, and then we're going to take the budget that we always put aside to add, and we're going to bring in the cavalry to try to get back to the playoffs. I never went into a season saying there's no question we're going to lose, we stink, and let's just make sure that our guy doesn't get hurt so we can trade him. There were times when we signed non-roster invites, which is when you sign a veteran player to a deal that if they make the team, you give them $1 million or $2 million. If they don't make the team, you don't owe them anything. Mostly as pinch hitters, defensive replacements, insurance at certain positions. And there's no doubt that when we were looking at building our team and deciding the team at the end of spring training, we would look to see who was injured, who was ready to go, and then we would decide which of the non-roster veterans we would add to the team, give them a couple $1 million to play. And one of the things we thought of is that if these players make the team and they have decent seasons, we can move them at the deadline. So we're actually only paying them for half the season if you trade them by the end of June. Remember, a 6-month season, players get paid over 6 months. So if you trade a guy at the end of June, you've paid him half his salary, and the team you trade him for pays the other half because he plays for them July, August, September. So we've done it with marginal players, whether it's a pitcher or a position player. But with your ace, never have done it, can't imagine doing it. Does it make sense for an acquiring team to look at the innings pitched for a particular pitcher that particular year before they decide how much inventory and prospects and others, players, that they would give up to get that pitcher? The number of times that we acquired in-season pitchers is many. We made a ton of deadline acquisitions that were pitchers. I'm trying to think, hold on, give me a minute, I'll think of it. The number of times that we did an analysis on the number of innings pitched that particular season. Wait, oh yeah, I got it. 0. Whether a pitcher was hurt, whether a pitcher was inconsistent, whatever the case is, we would know what the innings pitched were, but it never had an impact on whether or not we would give a bigger or smaller haul for that pitcher. So if the Marlins think that they're going to get a trade done that's better by having him on an innings limit, they are sorely, sorely mistaken. When we come back, we are going to review a movie that you can rent on Prime, and we're going to talk about a little Vegas news. The Aths were back in the news. We'll do it all after the break. Whether you call it soccer, football, or something else, you can take a shot to win cash with Heineken and DraftKings while watching the world's most popular sport. Make predictions on some of the biggest matches of the year and compete for $5,000 a contest in 15 free pools. Heineken is a lager for any league, and you'll enjoy action from the first to the last. Must be 21 plus to enter. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com/Heineken for details. Welcome back to Nothing Personal. It's Friday. I'm David Samson. Thank you for rating. Although I don't think rating and reviewing matters as much anymore, but thank you for doing it. More importantly, subscribe on our YouTube channel, Nothing Personal with David Samson. Download our episodes, listen to our episodes wherever you get your podcasts, and just enjoy your week with us, because we do. Yes, it's true. I watch a movie every day. Still, no matter what, no matter how many hours of programming I give you a week, no matter how many stuff and things I'm doing off the air, I'm still watching a movie every day. Can't you tell by the fully make-upped bags under my eyes? Which, by the way, today, Coca, for a Friday, usually by Friday, it's like a satchel. I feel pretty good today. I watched a movie the other day called All We Imagine Is Light because I wanted to understand why it didn't get more attention, given that I thought it would find its way to some Oscar nominations. It's a movie you can rent on Prime right now. It's a movie that takes place in India, and it's a movie about certain of the ways that relationships happen It's a movie that really focuses on two women and the role of women, the culture that exists in India. It is so beautifully shot and wonderfully, wonderfully written and made. It is a movie that you're supposed to leave at the end thinking, God, that doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem fair. Like when you leave Slumdog Millionaire and say the poverty is enough to give you night sweats, which it is. When you watch the beauty of this movie, you're able to say through the poverty, through the hard work, through the unbelievable issues and complications that take place during the course of an ordinary life, you're meant to think about the beauty of it. I always struggle with movies like this, and I didn't struggle with All We Imagine Is Light because it forces me to feel a manner of guilt for the birth lottery that I won, that we all won, regardless of your financial status. Believe me, when it comes to the birth lottery, if you're listening to this show, no matter where you're listening, you've won it. If you have time, please watch All We Imagine as Light. I've been imagining light. I think about light all the time. Sun studies. Sun studies are something you have to do when you build a ballpark that's open, where there's a roof that's retractable. And you have to figure out where the sun's going to be. And you have to slant the ballpark so home plate is actually facing southeast. That's where Marlins Park home plate is. The Oakland God dang it, Coca. 4.869. The Sacramento oh, come on. 12.8269. The Las Vegas Aths are building a ballpark. Oh, no, that's not right either. You know what? Forget the whole thing. Let me start again. Hi, my name's David Samson. Welcome back to Nothing Personal. The Aths, who are currently playing in West Sacramento for the next 3 years, who are trying to get a stadium built in Las Vegas to relocate there for 28, where all we've heard are positive things. This is happening. It's all coming together. Yesterday, they had two major things happen that are meant to tell us, don't you worry, we are on schedule. Now, forget the fact that the building's on 9 acres and no ballpark's been built on 9 acres. Let's not focus on that. Forget the fact that there's a law in Clark County on the number of parking spaces required, and there's no space for that amount of parking spots. Let's not quibble over that. Forget the fact that we're all excited that the ballpark's going to be facing north because you get to see the strip. That's exciting. Let's not focus on that. Let's not focus on the fact that Bally's, which owns the rest of the area where the ballpark's being built, where all of that development was going to happen, their stock is in the crap. And they don't have the money to finish any projects they're doing. But let's not talk about that. Let's talk about renderings. Hip, hip, hooray. The Las Vegas A's, the Sacramento Aths. Someone asked me, Coca, on davidsamsonpodcast.com just yesterday, why do you refer to them as the Aths? Because I do believe that when you look at box scores, I believe you will be seeing ATH and not A''S. I could be wrong. We'll wait to see. Renderings are funny. Let me tell you how renderings go. You hire an architecture firm. We hired Populous, the great Populous, to do Marlins Park. Earl Santee was the chief architect. Earl Santee will go down in history. He just gave up his chairmanship of Populous because he's not a spring chicken anymore, but he still will go down in history as the most brilliant mind in the history of stadium or arena design. It's not even close. He is the GOAT. There's no Jordan, LeBron debate. There's no Brady debate. This guy is the GOAT. Based in Kansas City, it used to be a firm called HOK where he was. It became Populous. Doesn't matter. What does matter is there's one thing I promise you. We did not have a team of 100 people working to refine designs that were displayed either to me or at meetings with the public entities with whom we worked. The A's are looking at a $1.7 billion project We built Marlins Park in 2012, finished it in 12 for about 515 was the budget. We came in on time and under budget. Stadiums and arenas, and these days, football stadiums, baseball ballparks, the budgets are just out of this world. You've heard me talk about the Tampa Bay Rays and the fight they're having because they may be delayed till 2029, and the impact on the budget is significant and are ready to build a ballpark in Florida there. They're talking well over $1 billion. This small ballpark in Las Vegas is already going to be $1.7 billion. The math on building a $1.7 billion baseball ballpark does not work. There is no way. Why can't the A's get the money from banks? Because you can't show pro formas that can in any way ever justify the debt that you have to take in order to build a $1.7 billion ballpark. You don't get the revenues. I don't care if you sell it out, which you won't. You can't convince the banks that you're going to sell out your team and your games 81 times a year. It's not going to happen in Vegas. It doesn't happen almost anywhere. So you can't assume that. But what's funny about the renderings that were released during this meeting with the stadium authority, with the politicians in Vegas, is the renderings always make it look like everyone is crowded, having the best time, and things are going great. We did have people who did renderings for Marlins Park, and we manipulated those renderings because we knew the final project never looks like the renderings. You've heard my tree story. Now's a good time to tell you again. Go back and look at the renderings for Marlins Park and say to yourself, wow, those look like the highest, tallest trees in the history of arborism. And they were. They were totally made up. The A's tried to tell you, now, of course, I'm doing this on purpose. I'm calling them everything, but I think you get that. We only have 13 minutes until it's the weekend. Stay with me. The A's told us, it's so ridiculous that 100 people are working on stuff because you talk about going over budget. But anyway, the A's told us they have filed for commercial grading permit this week with Clark County. And they said when it's issued, there'll be site preparation, excavation, utility foundation work. And then you get to vertical construction. That's when you do the concrete and the rebar, and you start getting the prefab, and you start getting seats, and you start getting a ballpark. But then they said that the groundwork could start ahead of the A's and Clark County entering a development agreement. I had to read that again because I can't believe how bad I was at getting a ballpark done in Miami, because I was under the impression that in order for construction to start, in order for us to move one piece of sand, that we had to have a fully negotiated development agreement that was approved by all of the public entities. A development agreement is the agreement that is used to build the stadium. A development agreement, which I have right behind me. I could pull out our development agreement. It's as thick as a thief. It has every detail. Where the money's coming from. How the money's going to be spent. The details required, you can't do on the fly. You can't do excavation and site prep and utility work without a development agreement. It's absurd. But the reason why you're being told that is that the construction timeline to open in 28, it's already March. They told you they could build this stadium in 31 to 33 months. Horse hockey. Although it is true, you can always build a ballpark in a quicker timeline if you work the third shift. And Vegas is a 24-hour town. Maybe they're budgeting to have 3 8-hour shifts. So construction will be going on 24/7. Then 31 to 33 months could be possible. But is that the responsible, smart way to build a ballpark? Absolutely not. But don't worry, we're now going to get all the information we need because the Las Vegas A's have announced a new team president. And no, it's not me. It's someone whose name you may recall. A guy named Mark Bedane. I don't know him, except I do know he was president of the Raiders when the football team moved to Vegas from Oakland in 2020. I do know that he's the same guy who left the Raiders. He had been there for a long time. He started there in 91. He was named their president in 2015. He resigned in 2021. There was a whole lot of accounting irregularities. There was a whole lot of stuff that happened in 21 that caused the resignation, not just of him as president, but also a bunch of executives under him. But don't worry, everything's normal. It's Vegas. Everybody gets a second chance in Vegas. Do you think that John Fisher, the owner, the newly crowned member of the executive council, by the way, that's a rotational appointment. The executive council is the group of owners who are one step above the other owners. They have private, smaller meetings with the commissioner. Things have to go through the executive council before they go to the full ownership for votes. Unlike how Bud Selig did it, where once you're on the council, you're a jet for life. Rob does it rotationally, which is very fair. And it was John Fisher's turn, so that's very normal. It's not in any way an I love you vote. Do you think when John Fisher told Rob he's got himself a new president, this is my guy? This is a stadium guy. This is a guy who is going to be responsible to open a team, to get a team going in a new city. A little different. I'd probably call him the executive vice president of ballpark development, or maybe call him the executive vice president of relocation, because I don't know that I would want my team to name a president where the New York Times in 2022 reported about numerous problems, large and small, in the organization, about lax controls over how money was spent, how people were paid, the bungling of the payment of taxes. Again, I am not in any way telling you that any of that is true. I'm only giving you the fact that he was the president, then he resigned, he stayed in Vegas, he was trying to do a development of a new NBA arena in Vegas, and now we'll be running the A's. Maybe the best part of running the A's is the reality that your one job is to get that team moved from Sacramento to Vegas. I am far more interested in seeing who is in charge of the budget for the ballpark, because that's what Major League Baseball is far more interested in. That's what the banks are far more interested in. Because if the A's turn into the Bills, there's a really big problem. The Bills are a team trying to build a stadium, and every time you turn the page of your local newspaper, the price of that football stadium has gone up and up and up. The Bills are now in a position that they are $800 million over their original budget. $800 million. They are now at $2.2 billion for their football stadium. The reason that's in the news is they've got to go back to the NFL and say, please, please, let us borrow more money. We need to. Think about it. We're up to at least 9 events a year there. Nothing. Personal pick of the day. I don't know what to say. The Warriors didn't cover against the Nets. They were down by 20 at the end of 1. They were actually going to cover with about a minute left, and then all of a sudden, boom, the Warriors win by 2. I'm sorry. I'm angry. It shouldn't be that I am 19 and 26 trying to hang on till baseball season. Just hang on, Dave. It's almost March 18th. We can almost talk about the Rogers and Yamamoto going against the Cubs, where you're guaranteed to get a split, because no one wants to go to Japan and start the season 0-2. But we're not there yet. We're doing one game this weekend, Coca. One game only. Tonight, the Denver Nuggets are 8-point favorites over the Suns. I can't help but think about Matt Ishbia. I'm not saying that I think about him all the time. Certainly not during a few times a week. But I'll tell you what I do think about is that the new owner-itis that Matt Ishbia has is just about done. He's just about at the point where he said to himself, wow, I am a prize fool. I gave up so much for Kevin Durant. I thought I had this thing nailed. I thought I was going to be a champion immediately. Turns out the Suns stink. Kevin Durant is still the subject of trade rumors. Word came out yesterday, Coco. What was it? We got a Butler-like list of teams that Durant may be traded to. I think it was the Huge. I can't remember it right now, but it was the Heat were one, and then there were two others. I think I got to do this, Coca. It's too easy not to do. My official wait to see. Wait to see when I tell you something's going to happen. If it happens, great. If not, I promise we'll revisit it. The Phoenix Suns are done with Kevin Durant. That experiment didn't work. Kevin Durant will be traded by the Suns before the start of the next NBA season. Wait to see. One of the teams that likely could use Kevin Durant because they are DBR, despondent beyond repair, is the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks, as you know, are on the struggle bus. Anthony Davis is hurt. Kyrie Irving is hurt. Nico Harrison is crushed. The last thing you want is to hear from a limited partner about the state of your team. Mark Cuban went on WFAA in Texas and gave an interview. How it's possible that the interviewer did not ask, I'm sorry, Mark, I'm a little confused here. You said you didn't know about the Luka trade, but you promised us that after you sold the team that you were still in charge of basketball operations. And that moron, Samson, on Nothing Personal, was telling the whole world that you were out, that you had nothing to do with anything. But you kept saying you were, and I backed you, Mark. What happened? But of course, the interviewer didn't ask that. They were solely focused on the Luka trade. And boy, did Cuban talk about it. He said if the Mavs are going to trade Luka, notice how he didn't say we. It used to be we or I. Cuban's more of an I guy than a we guy. If the Mavs are going to trade Luka, that's one thing. Just get a better deal. No respect to Anthony Davis. If we had gotten 4 unprotected, oh, he did say we. All right, just edit that out. I didn't see that in the rundown. Just say I didn't say we or I, and just say that he is a we because he's a we, even though he does have no power. So just skip that and go right from the wait to see right to this, okay? All right, here we go. And 4869. If the Mavs are going to trade Luka, Mark Cuban said, that's one thing. Just get a better deal. No disrespect to Anthony Davis. If we had gotten 4 unprotected number ones and Anthony Davis and Max Christie, this would be a different conversation. Well, Mark, what's the different conversation? I thought that you said that you never would trade Luka. And the interviewer said from WFAA, well, would you trade Luka? And he said, I'm not going to go there. Well, why not? Either you're willing to trade him for 4 unprotected number ones, Anthony Davis and Max Christie, or you're not because he's a 25-year-old cornerstone of a franchise who you're never going to trade, put into the Hall of Fame as a lifetime Dallas Maverick. So I'm just not understanding because what you're saying is what all executives say, other than the fact you're not one anymore, is that everybody can be traded. All we need is a simple overpay. 4 number ones, Anthony Davis and Max Christie, you can bet your bottom dollar that the Mavericks would be in a better position tomorrow than they're going to be given the trade they actually did of Luka for Davis and Christie. But the fact is that Mark Cuban, as limited partner, has no business going and doing an interview to talk about this. And if I am Miriam Adelson or her son-in-law, I'm calling up Mark Cuban and I'm saying, hey, zip it. It is not your right anymore to talk about the Mavericks. Now, you can do it at cocktail parties. You could even think about doing it in the privacy of your own home. We did not let limited partners go on the air and give interviews. That's not their role. Do you see a lot of limited partners of the Yankees going on and on and on, talking about the Yankees, about who they should or shouldn't sign? Absolutely not. And the reason is that the general partner, the main owner, is the one in control. And when you're in control, as part of the documents of being in control, there are stipulations about what you can and can't do as a limited partner. You sign an agreement. One of the provisions in the agreements that I like signing are that you are not to speak in public to media without prior written permission from me. And the reason we do that, it's just business. Have a good week. Sorry, Mark. It's nothing personal.